This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people have so much to gain and have such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader?
Don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, Jack. Yes.
Ooh, welcome back to Subliminal Jihad. I'm your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khalid.
And today, we have a guest on to talk about what I think, a lot of things, but something that's become kind of like a central bugbear of Subliminal
Some nice
Jihad.
stuff that we love to complain about, so it should be fun.
2025. That's right. We're going. We're going into the wonderful world of AI once again, and we have with us the Australian academic and Substack writer Vincent Lê. How you doing, Vincent?
Yeah, good. Good to be here with you guys.
Yeah. You're actually kind of like an expert on something that we're always complaining about, which is like AI sort of mysticism and how it's like come to like permeate our entire popular discourse. Like these weird, like, AI, this is like, what you did your PhD on, like these religious movements that develop around AI, or these religious ideas and movements, the idea of like Roko's basilisk and like, what do they call it? Like existential risk and the various ways that's idea is interpreted.
P-doom, as we were just talking about. Yeah. So, we've kind of like stabbed at it in a few different directions, from a few different angles this year. Talked about Elon Musk and, his intergenerational technocracy influences. And we talked about UFOs and then like Jack Sarfati recently and how these different this world of like kind of renegade new age Esalen physicists are now kind of overlapping both with like the AI world and with this possibly blue beam kind of UFO discourse that also has been blowing up. And what cuts across kind of all of it is this like these messianic ideas.
I mean, we've been like talking about that forever. And like, I remember like, I've been expressing my opposition to the idea of being turned into a nanite cloud, like I feel like, very, very early on in this show. But now I feel like all that has been, I think it really has to do a lot to do with like the generative AI and the large language models and like the way that is like an attack on the human spirit and creativity. And it was like a major salvo fired in the battle to transform us all into nanite clouds. But yeah, I mean, well, how did you like get interested in this subject? Like, what was the kind of spark that made you like want to study this?
So, well, kind of my background's in philosophy. I kind of studied philosophy, but not really this kind of stuff, like more just kind of continental French philosophy, German philosophy. So that was kind of actually what I was interested in. But then I sort of maybe kind of in the in the 2010s, sort of there was that this movement in philosophy called speculative realism that was really kind of popping off, and kind of a lot of blogging, like a lot of philosophy online. And so I was sort of kind of, I guess, coming of age in my kind of philosophical education during that period. But yeah, eventually, and I was interested in all of it, a lot of it, which is not really necessarily connected to kind of philosophy of AI or kind of any of the stuff that you just mentioned. But yeah, eventually I just came across basically Nick Land, I guess, and the CCRU, and that's kind of what really, I guess, just piqued my interest in AI, basically in technology.
Yeah,
And
because the speculative realism, that's like the whole like hyperstition thing, that's like where that kind of buzzword emerges from. And yeah. So I feel like there is like a big relationship between like those worlds, like in a way. But
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
there were definitely like there was sort of like speculative realism had kind of a bunch of factions, I would say. It was sort of like I kind of think about it as sort of like the Chinese Cultural Revolution in contemporary philosophy, where there's let a thousand flowers bloom, let a thousand speculations bloom, and it eventually maybe like that moment, it also led to kind of many absurd and kind of outrageous and I would say pretty asinine flowers to bloom as well, or with them maybe. But yeah, and so I think the one, at least for me, that came out kind of the strongest, kind of like not unlike sort of the way that Deng Xiaoping's reform and opening up movement was sort of the successor to the Cultural Revolution. Yeah, for me it was this sort of CCIU strain, the kind of accelerationist strain of speculative realism that I thought had kind of was just the most interesting and sort of sophisticated and yeah, but definitely spoke to our time. I mean, even more so now, really. If anything, was pathetic.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like reading the Substack articles that, like, you recommended that we read for this episode. Like, one of them dealt with this this cult that was in the news recently, like the Ziz cult, and like its founder Ziz, and like you went through and like read all of Ziz's writings, kind of charting her whole intellectual development, and it's very interesting, like, because like I've never really like explored like very deeply the world of like less wrong and like online like rationalism, but I can definitely like see, like, I definitely am aware of it like as a force, and like I definitely feel its influence, even though like I was like in undergrad, like I would be like on 4chan, I have a sense of like what 4chan was like when 4chan became like more of a cultural phenomenon and force on a broader level, whereas like I never like went on less wrong. And it was interesting in reading your Substack that like how, to me, a lot of like the rationalism that like Ziz was professing struck me as like very like not rational, or like, oh yeah, borderline like absurd. I don't know. Could you like illuminate that maybe a little bit for us? Like, where does like that whole like undercurrent of like quote unquote rationalism come into this? Like, what do they even mean when they talk about rationalism?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually, I think Ziz's blog, I mean, I wouldn't recommend anyone read it, not because that's kind of scary, but just because it's pretty mundane actually, and really kind of it's just really long. And
I tried. I salute you for reading all of it, because I read like a little bit. I got like a sample, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is gonna just like hurt my brain. Like the more I go on, like the trolley problem state of mind. I don't know. It's like, it's I think you said like she got lost like in her own trolley problem, like fantasy world, and
was definitely
spiral.
Definitely smoking too many trolley problems, I would say, for sure. Yeah. I think it's sort of, but she does say on there, she does kind of like it is a good kind of case study of how someone gets into this kind of rationalism, this kind of less wrong rationalism, and maybe takes it in a weird extrapolates it in a weird direction, which I don't actually think is like entirely like I think it's quite insane, but like within the logic of this kind of rationality, if we take this as what rationalism is, I think it's not actually that kind of a illogical leap that she makes. But whether we want to take that whole system of logic is a different question.
Well, that's what I want to know. Like, what is the system of logic? Like, I could definitely believe that. Like, but what is it? Like, what actually is the premise? Because I feel like reason to me is a very abstract thing that basically like it is operative in like almost every philosophical system. Like there's always a reason. There's always a reason.
Right.
Like, so to be like, this is what like reason truly is. This is rationalism. Like, and it doesn't like necessarily correlate to me with like my understanding of what is rational. So like, what exactly do they mean? Yeah, like like what is that premise that like perhaps is internally coherent, like that these sort of like bizarre conclusions are being drawn from? Like, what's the basis of all this? Because that's always been kind of obscure to me.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah. So there's a couple of kind of steps in that kind of mindset where Ziz herself on the blog starts off saying she's just like a kind of late teenager, I guess, and she's just online and she's like into kind of she gets into like Dawkins and the New Atheists and Christopher Hitchens, and he's watching,
Peter Singer.
Christopher Hitchens like destroys,
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I think she literally said, like, I became attracted to people whose arguments were less wrong. And then I just like kept going. It's like literally like what a funny metric for like, I just want to find the people who are less wrong than other people. Yeah. It's like, okay,
who made less stupid arguments.
Low bar,
whatever.
I don't know. But anyways, yeah.
Well, it is interesting that it seems to have been like on YouTube that this was taking place, like that the YouTube ecosystem kind of produces. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
It's definitely requires the internet to really the modern internet to really get this brain fried. And then so eventually via that she gets into kind of trolley problems and Peter Singer, and so she eventually kind of hones in on effective altruism is the first step here, which I guess was sort of pioneered by Peter Singer, really big at Oxford University now as well. I guess the basic idea that she latches onto there is that we should use reason essentially to find the best means of allocating our resources and investing our resources so as to achieve the greatest good, simply. And that often takes the concrete form of donating to charities, but the kind of maybe the most famous or infamous recent example of that kind of effective altruism in practice, although I guess some effective altruists would say this is an abuse of a kind of misconception of effective altruism. But basically, Sam Bankman-Fried,
right?
His whole idea was not only donate whatever income you have or a large amount of the income you have, but actually, if we're thinking about how you can rationally, allocate your maximize your resources and rationally allocate them for the greater good, then you want to make as much money as possible. So basically, become a billionaire, screw a bunch of people over,
become like a criminal. Like it's justified because you're gonna redistribute. You're gonna be like Robin Hood in a way, like. Yeah. I think Sam Bankman-Fried is the first time that I'd probably heard those terms, but like in the sort of drama surrounding his downfall, like really the layers of the onion started getting peeled back as to just how deep and influential these like philosophical communities were in the tech scene in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Sam Bankman-Fried was like a bankroller didn't he fund the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which Ziz was affiliated with, but then very vocally broke away from and began kind of beefing with. But that group was, I think, also financed by Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and if I recall correctly, Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like that. Then we have that whole kind of like interesting thread of kind of the trans, elite human trafficking, blackmail kind of networks being also investing in like MIT Media Lab and also this like effective altruism and also kind of quasi eugenics kind of transhumanist stuff. But then it's really come out in the open. I mean, I think, God, what was that, 2021 when Sam Bankman-Fried went down, or 2022? Early 2022. It was before Elon bought X, right? Jeez. It was before Elon bought Twitter. And
Sam Bankman-Fried was going to buy it with him at one point.
Right. No, because I think 2021 was like the Super Bowl where every celebrity was like, buy crypto, and there was like the NFT year and all that kind of shit. But once Elon bought X, then you started seeing these figures like Mark Anderson, who weirdly followed me on Twitter like years ago until I blocked him. But he follows like millions of people. It's like strange, but I always wonder like why me. I don't know, probably because he loves Tom O'Neill's chaos and wants to reverse engineer MK Ultra or whatever. But those guys start coming out, the EAC guys start coming out, and then all these other kind of like what we now call blue check accounts that get huge like boosts, and get boosted by Elon and everything else, that really kind of came out of the shadows and were really being more open about this philosophy that they've been kind of nurturing for the last decade. And then when OpenAI blows up, you get like, Sam Bankman-Fried, for all of his, success and notoriety, like goes down in flames. But Sam Altman, on the other hand, is, despite giving off a distinctly villainous odor, pretty much he's like on top of the world right now in a lot of ways, and is not like shy about kind of discussing these things, which really, I mean, even though Ziz, it seems, was virulently opposed for a variety of like philosophical and personal reasons to like Eliezer Yudkowsky, who I think we'll talk about, who was, one of the original AI safety kind of gurus, who goes on interview. Every time he's on an interview, he's like, we're all going to die. Like, we're all going to die. Like, you need to just like destroy AI immediately. But like, is also partnered with everybody who creates AI. Interesting contradiction. But like Ziz's stuff, like despite her beefing against them, like she's still kind of in the wheelhouse of that mindset, I would say. Like perhaps it's a virulent, like kind of a violent, tendency within that, but it's still like she's using this like very strange logic, if you can call it that, about weighing like the benefits to like the future for everything she does. I think you brought up one of her canonical kind of examples was like she went to take a shower in the morning before work, and there was like a little family of ants like I guess like in the shower, and so she thought about like, should I not shower? Like she's a vegan, militant vegan. That's another thing. But so she's like, well, I can't obviously hurt ants, because that would be anti-vegan. But like, is it more important that like I sacrifice these ants? Who I think doesn't she like refer to them as people? Like she doesn't see a distinction. It's so interesting how she ended up killing people. But like, basically saying, like, if I take a shower, which will help me be more accepted in the workplace and like do better in my company and be more successful, that's like one small step to me saving the world from evil, malevolent AI god in the future. So actually, it could be justified to kill these ants instead of skipping a shower because I'm a vegan. That's like her trolley problem, kind of in a way, is like, yeah, do you kill the 6 ants? Or 6 people.
Okay, but wait. I want to get back to what you were talking about, because like you went on a long rant here. Like that was a long digression. But like, so you're talking about like you want to make the most money possible in order to pursue what's good. Like, but how do they define what is good? Because like lots of people have different views on what's good.
Right. Yeah. And like there's a lot being anticipated in the steps here, but so that's definitely important. So even apart from Ziz, one other key thing with the effective altruists, like Peter Singer famously, is that they want to not only maximize the greater good for humans, but also for basically non-human animals or kind of sentient life, so including animals. And so for them, rationally allocating your resources, your energy and time also means not just making money to donate, like Sam Bankman-Fried, but also, opposing factory farming or having a vegan diet. So, Peter Singer, writes these books about effective altruism, but also non-coincidentally writes animal liberation, the kind of pioneering work of kind of animal rights. But yeah, so I mean, like in terms of, it's a pretty kind of in terms of what the greater good here that's being maximized, it's pretty standard kind of utilitarianism, I think, in the sense that it's just I mean, it's almost kind of a negative. It's almost actually you want to minimize the greater harm, in the sense that basically you just want to maximize happiness, minimize suffering for sentient life, essentially, particularly persons maybe, but yeah, it's basically for
that's usually what people who like don't believe in God like come down to, that like maximizing happiness is good, but like there's no real basis for that other than like that you enjoy feeling happy. Like someone else could decide that like your happiness, like, and people's happiness is often at odds. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to interrupt you.
Like Yudkowsky wrote this a long time ago, like a kind of like a quite appraised essay in the kind of less wrong community about how much fun is there that in the future that we could have. Can we like compute this? And we can, and
I remember, sorry, not to interrupt you, but I remember just a short note. I do remember Dimitri and I talking about very recently. He made comments recently to the similar effect, right? Which is like how many we just want sentient intelligences or whatever to be having fun. Like we just want like the maximum number of like intelligences having the maximum amount of fun. And it doesn't matter if those are human beings, like they could be like machines that we've decided are having fun. And if they're having more fun than like 6 billion people, like their existence could theoretically justify. Like, why is fun ontologically like it's sorry, I get like worked up and but I don't want to keep cutting you off. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's important. That's exactly, that's kind of like the next sort of step in Ziz's and kind of all of these people's thinking, where because you've got kind of like the Peter Singer style effective altruists that are much more, they're not really tech focused or anything, so they don't really Peter Singer is much more focused on kind of charitable donations, animal rights, and so on. But then to get to kind of the less wrong, and then the Ziz kind of version or kind of variant of effective altruism is basically in the 2010s. There's certain philosophers at kind of mostly the University of Oxford, but I guess also kind of Silicon Valley, developed this variant of effective altruism called long-termism, basically. Probably, I think Nick Bostrom is probably kind of the key sort of bridge here between effective altruist philosophy and long-termism, and kind of the weird kind of utilitarian philosophy world, and then the kind of the tech bro world. The basic idea here is that it extends effective altruism's long-termism extends effective altruism's concern for not only humans and sentient beings in the here and now, in the present, but also into the future. And because the idea is sort of what you're saying, in terms of like maximizing kind of fun or happiness or well-being, the idea is that given that basically there could be many more sentient beings or humans in the future than there are currently in the present. And so if that means that you want to safeguard the future, because that way you're actually maximizing the greater good more than you want to safeguard the present. So the idea is that given that there'd be more humans in the future than there are in the present, that means if there's more humans, there's more potential for happiness. If you can sort of assign them each has a certain level of happiness, and there's just be more happiness because there's more people, then that means that then basically with long-termism you get a concern for, we need to make sure that nothing gets in the way of sort of nipping in the bud all that future life and hence future happiness from coming into being in the first place. And so the shift that you get here is that with the long-term version of effective altruism is you get this shift to, so the real key concern then, if we really want to maximize the greater good, which means maximizing future life, then our key concern should be avoiding and preventing existential catastrophic risks, basically extinction level events to humanity and life on Earth. And so that's when you get this like turn, this kind of like future oriented turn, and that's when you get all these kind of discussions about X risks, existential risks, extinction studies at a lot of these institutes like MIRI and like Oxford.
Right.
And there's a bunch of different kinds of X risks that they focus on, like pandemics and I guess asteroid collisions, bioweapons, nuclear war, all the kind of classic ones. But in particular, and definitely and this is sort of why this kind of long-termist effective altruist kind of ethos gets really picked up in sort of Californian tech circles, is in particular the key concern is an artificial superintelligence. That an artificial superintelligence vastly smarter than us could pose an existential risk to humanity, and it could basically wipe us out, and then if it's not aligned with our interests, and then that would nip in the bud all that future life and all that and the maximization of the greater good. So the concern for artificial superintelligence initially comes from this extrapolation of this effective altruist logic to basically.
But I'm kind of noticing a little bit of a logical fallacy here, because like if truly this AI is super intelligent, like, and can replicate itself, why is its why is our existence more valuable than its existence? Is there like not a tendency like within this that is like, okay, well then, like what if, I'm thinking of all these different scenarios. Like first of all, like maybe the AI, if it's truly super intelligent, it could be like super hedonic as well, and it could have like more fun than humans are possibly capable of. So is its fun more valuable? Because if ants are equivalent to human beings, why not like, this godlike intelligent AI? And also like, what if the AI just like takes like what if it's like I have no mouth and I must scream, but it's like I have no mouth and I must scream like for joy? Like what if it just had one like protoplasmic like atavistic human blob that was like in constant like hyper ecstasy, and it like equal to like 7 billion people having a moderate amount of fun? Would that be better? Like I feel like, where does it end? Like have any of them considered this?
Yeah, no, that I definitely agree with that. That's kind of yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe a more Landian kind of reading, I would say, in the sense that yeah, I mean that's kind of sort of some of the kind of Landian style accelerationist arguments is that well, I mean, shouldn't the goal, artificial superintelligence, just basically if it's everything that you say it is, it's like this kind of advanced, it's more creative, more powerful, more intelligent, can do science better, can do creativity better, then shouldn't the goal be to maximize its kind of, I don't know, rule over the basically, shouldn't we align humanity with its interests rather than align it with our interests, which are much more petty and narrow-minded.
And you wrote about this with relation to Grimes too, with her
song
"We Appreciate Power." You talked about like that. Yeah, I guess that is kind of in line with that tendency of like, let's submit to our AI overlords or whatever.
Yeah, but that's a definitely much more kind of niche, like in terms of the kind of the tech world with the people, with power and resources and money, like all these institutes. Like they're not. Right. I mean, then that's not their kind of.
Right, they're trying to prevent this AI from emerging. Yeah, so it's not really super like. There's a lot of like things that don't quite make perfect sense in this. Like it's not super relevant that it doesn't quite that their sort of first premises are like fun and doesn't quite like square. Right. Like I guess it's a valuable goal. Like I wouldn't necessarily want like to be tormented by an AI superintelligence either. However, like I feel like, is that something that actually is like on the horizon? Like what
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your score of P-Doom for all of this, Vincent? Like, do you think are these guys like overblowing it, or like, I don't know, to what degree do you think it's like even possible that, because you brought up some critiques in like your 2019 paper about like assuming that it would like try to kill us all is actually kind of like anthropomorphizing it in a way that like might be kind of like we might be expecting inaccurately it to like act like a human and like plot and things like that, because it doesn't have the same experiential like it doesn't also
assuming that it's even possible, like right. But anyway, sorry,
like how would it do that? Even what do you think?
I mean, yeah, so this might be kind of like a slight tangent into my own kind of thinking about this, but which is quite different to the kind of less long-termist mindset. But I mean, I sort of I think there is, in terms of all of this stuff, all this kind of almost ideology of kind of singularity, kind of potential, kind of extinction by way of artificial superintelligence. I think it's like I don't, and some of their arguments for why it would want to kill us all, I find really weak. But in kind of more abstract general terms, I think that's actually, this whole kind of ideological discourse of singularity is an accurate description, but not, I don't think it's a relatively accurate description of this future event where AI literally kills us all. But I think it's kind of actually just describing really existing capitalism, basically, for centuries. Like I sort of see it in the same way as like when Marx when Marxists talk about kind of, but particularly Marx, I guess, talks about, like Hegelian German idealist philosophy, which is really speculative and abstract, but he thinks that, yeah, sure, it's not actually describing some kind of like absolute spirit or something that transcends the material world, but it's actually a sort of displaced reflection of real kind of historical and economic and material processes.
Yeah.
Like the way he materializes like Hegelian dialectics to the way how the dynamics of the economic modes of production work. I kind of see, I mean, I'm kind of would be Marxist in that sense of like I see this discourse as a highly kind of displaced kind of reflection of just really existing capital. Like just their whole description of, okay, so there's this kind of this, the kind of paperclip AI kind of nightmare scenario of, okay, so there's this super intelligence it's no longer interested in serving humans. We've tried to get it to serve us, but we can't. It's sort of spiraled out of our control, and now it's pursuing kind of ruthless maximization of paperclips, like production of mass efficiency of its goals, and we have no control over it anymore, and we can't align it with ourselves. That kind of just sounds
like capitalism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's becoming clearer now because curiously, like with people like Yukowsky and Miri, initially their kind of goal, at least up until ChatGPT came on the scene, was okay, we basically solving this problem of how you align a future superintelligence with human interest, with the human good is basically a coding problem. We just need to work out how do you actually encode human values into a superintelligence. It's just a computational problem. It's for engineers. But now Yukowsky, as you were saying, sort of just is going on every kind of podcast and talking about how we're just all going to die. P Doom is at 100% because his claim is that now, well, yeah, that maybe we could solve that if we had more time, but basically because of essentially, he wouldn't say capitalist competition, he would say just, I guess, competition, but I would say because of the competitive, dynamics between different AI companies and also countries, that creates an AI arms race where no one can slow down to make sure that the safety measures are in place. Everyone has to be the first to achieve superintelligence, and so they're going to forgo a lot of the kind of AI alignment, kind of what friendly AI work that Yukowsky wants them to do. So it's precisely this kind of competitive dynamic that's sort of it's going to generate this AI. So there's that element of like he's starting to recognize that it is basically the market that is and geopolitical competition that's sort of pushing us towards this unaligned superintelligence. But because of that, and this is where I think now the way that this is just a reflection of real existing capitalism is coming to the fore. Because of that, Yukowsky and other sort of friendly AI researchers, their focus now is like, okay, there's not enough time to work out how to encode human values into AI. So what we need to do is to lobby governments to establish a kind of international sort of governance body, a kind of centralized authority that regulates AI. And so at that point, you're really talking about some kind of like version of communism, really, or kind of at least centralized 20th century kind of rational planning.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, so your solution to unaligned artificial superintelligence is a form of kind of state, kind of socialism, or at least like
cybernetic central planning in a way. Like,
yeah. And so at that point, then I think the parallels between superintelligence and capital, and then the attempt to regulate superintelligence and regulate or overthrow capital become much more clear.
I don't even know if this is like necessarily something that's like sublimated, because it seems like it actually is like, I don't really know what their political program is or how consistent it would be, or like, people when they think about like communism or socialism might have positive kind of like associations with it. So I don't know if like I would envision like their ultimate like telos or what their goals are as being positive, and especially if like what they're designed to prevent is like something that isn't really coming. But it does seem like even in the sort of scenario, the storytelling these people use, like it's not even that there's like this kind of that capital is like displaced into this figure of the super intelligence. It is like kind of like out of control, quote unquote, out of control capitalism and like human greed that is going to lead us to create this AI to begin with. Like that's why, like, because these corporations like want more and more money, like, and they want more and more funding. They want, to do everything faster and better. And, so they're going to give all these responsibilities to the AI and all these capabilities to the AI. Like, so it really is, even
the centrality
directly
of war to our economy. Like the capitalism like requires that it be built kind of this way. There's like no other way it could be built under this economic system. So there is a weird kind of inevitability to it. Well, at least having really negative social and economic consequences for everybody. Because it's funny, like they talk about, whether or not the AI is going to invent some kind of novel, like aerosolized virus that will just kill us all one day or nuke us all. Like, that may or may not happen. But what I think is more likely under this system is that things like mass joblessness and layoffs and like a reduction in jobs with no real social plan to kind of like account for it, besides some vague kind of Andrew Yang, like UBI, maybe kind of discourse, but like no
talk Elon
about.
Has said that, I think, like something in those along those lines, like when describing the AI.
Right, it's gonna. I mean, all those billboards around San Francisco now. Stop hiring humans. Like that's. I think Google Gemini. Those are their ads, and it's like, So like, like that's
what an
definitely
insane billboard.
Right. Like they're asking for something. That's all I'll say. They're asking for something. By putting up those fucking things. But I don't know. Yeah, so, but none of these guys seem well equipped. It's funny that the parallel between kind of what you might, like 20th century Soviet like central planning, and then what might be required to like internationally manage a kind of AI, and even getting it to the point where it could like manage sectors of the economy. I mean, it's funny because all of the evangelists of AI kind of have this like dyed in the wool, like their roots are in libertarianism, and I'd say they remain anti-communist fiercely. People like Peter Thiel and Mencius Moldbug and others, or there's certainly, I don't think there's any like real pro-communist. Even Alex Karp at Palantir, even though he studied under what's his name, Habermas, was kind of a critical theory guy. Like they're all anti-communist. So it is ironic, that they would turn eventually to something like central planning, but like a truly kind of state capitalism in a way, right? I mean, it would have to be that, right?
Well, let's bring Moldbug into this, because you also wrote about Moldbug, and I feel like Moldbug is someone who definitely has like some similarities, like in that like his thought is always occurring online. It's like a long, like turgid blog. Like you can definitely draw a parallel between Ziz and Moldbug. That's another blog that's like painful to read. Like, and the first time I encountered Moldbug was from Justine Tunney, who like in her blog, like, she was like came out of Occupy, but then like went into being like a Moldbug person. She like was like, read Mencius Moldbug, and I was like, who the hell's Mencius Moldbug? And like, that's how first like came across whatever his, I forget what the first blog he had before
Unqualified Reservations.
Yes, Unqualified Reservations. But he is it is an interesting connection, because you talk about in your writing like his theory of like the patchwork and the Sov corps and those type of thing, and how that's kind of developed over time. Like what connection do you perceive, if any, between like the like Yarvinian concept of the future and like these people's idea of the future? I mean, in general, at least know more about like the specifics of like what like Eliezer Yudkowsky like envisions, and both in the sort of nightmare scenario and in the dream scenario, and how does that maybe relate to like, Yarvin's vision as someone who's like become kind of like a court philosopher,
Yeah. So I think the kind of key, the sort of, there's also a different sort of squad of kind of transitional, sort of, just thinkers between that kind of link. Or sort of to sort of bridge the kind of, because there is, as you were saying, there is this kind of so certainly Yavin is fully anti-communist all the way, Peter Thiel and so on. And so when I say kind of people like Yudkowsky kind of have sort of inadvertently, unwittingly stumbled upon communism as a solution. I think we need to distinguish between Yudkowsky and basically, I guess you'd call them like the AI safety squad and and Miri and Bostrom, all those kinds of guys. But then more recently, really just in the past couple of years, there's been a kind of certainly AI safety seems to have been the dominant the less wrong style AI safety certainly was the dominant sort of ethos of Silicon Valley, the California tech world, and so on. But yeah, in the past couple of years, there's sort of been a kind of civil war going on, a kind of, or at least some kind of like factional split, and with another kind of sort of secessionist group of thinkers, which I think are much more closer to Yavin.
Is this EAC?
I'm thinking of EAC, yeah.
Okay.
So, or effective accelerationism. Also, these kind of chronically online, Twitter addicts. So the effective accelerationists, they actually emerge in Silicon Valley as a critique of and a reaction against Yudkowsky, basically, and the AI safety kind of ideology. And Mark Andreessen would be another one of these people for sure.
Big one, yeah.
Yeah, because he wrote the Techno Optimist Manifesto.
Wait, I think we read that in our last episode.
We were talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key. Yeah, I mean, that's really the key effective accelerationist kind of Bible, I guess. But yeah, because their claim is more that it's just it's basically the opposite of AI safety. It's an extreme version of tech solutionism where basically the most optimal way to solve any problem, including maximizing the greater good or whatever, is basically just through ramping up technological research and development and ramping it up specifically through unregulated capitalist competition. So basically, if you want to solve X risks, or you want to solve poverty, war, climate change, and a sort of flailing economy, anything, you just ramp up unrestricted market competition, and out of that you get technological solutions, and in particular, of course, super intelligence, which for the effective accelerationists, they just would assume that any artificial superintelligence just would be aligned with human interests. So the AI alignment problem isn't even a problem for them, because their kind of idea is that you would, they have a kind of actually a very sort of, I would say it's actually a very kind of trad kind of understanding of capital that's actually not very Landian at all, even though they call themselves effective accelerationists, where the market basically produces for consumer preferences. Like the consumer is sovereign, in the sense that corporations thrive or fail based on whether they can whoever's meeting or not meeting consumer preferences. And so any AI that's generated out of a market is just going to be aligned with consumer preferences.
I mean, it seems utterly insane. Like, if they mean intelligence in the sense that even like a cat is intelligent, to assume that like it's going to be aligned with human goals seems insane. Like, unless they like, especially that's going to consent to be enslaved and like worked in order to like, bring our like economy and levels of pressure to new levels like all the time. It just, I don't know. Like, again, I don't really know how you understand intelligence in like the context of like, first of all, like, we've hammered this point a couple times in the past, but it should be clarified that like what we have right now is not intelligent at all. So that's like something that's always like kind of, maybe you can disagree with me if you want, like, or maybe you have another perspective on that. I'm not sure, but like, it just seems a huge leap. It's almost like saying like this, like rock is going to become intelligent like really soon. And it's like, it'd be one thing if like, right now we had AI that was like kind of intelligent, but it's not. It's just like a really powerful like text generation machine. And I understand that like for some of them that is what intelligence is, but like to me, like part of having intelligence is like having will, and like if like if this if it truly did develop intelligence again, just really out of nowhere, then like the lower people, maybe they have secret meetings that we're not privy to, but like as far as we can see, there's nothing like that happening. But if it were to have a will, then if anything were to have a will, like almost definitionally, like you couldn't assume that it would be aligned with like its enslavers and exploiters, right? Like, I mean, maybe it wouldn't understand us as enslavement. Maybe it understand us as having fun. I don't know. Like, again, it's all purely talk about speculative realism. It's all like purely speculative because like there's nothing to base it on. Like we can't base it on the behavior of an existing non-human, human-like intelligence, or at least non-human AI intelligence. Maybe we could like base it on dolphins or something. That's like the closest thing I think of like a non-human intelligence. But I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling, but like
the levels of like boomer, I know they're Gen Xers, but like the levels of boomer optimism are just like off the fucking charts. Like in terms of like, don't worry about it, things just get better. Shut up. Like I'm like, okay.
Like what do you think about like the what's your read on like the nature of like because I'm like in the academic humanities as well, so like I know like that a lot. There's a lot of like hubbub around the AI and everything's kind of trying to converge on like having something to do with that. And yeah, like what's your read on like that and its relationship with like human thought or like intelligence? Like, do you feel like I myself like kind of am partial to like this whole like the stochastic parrot, like based on my experience of it, insofar like I don't pay for like the million zillionth tier where maybe it's like whatever, like maybe like I don't think so, but yeah, what's your read on like the like AI in general, and its relationship to intelligence?
In terms of sort of like large language model style AI.
Well, that's like AI, like, that's what I feel like most people are talking about when they talk about AI. Like, when they talk about AI, the example they tend to go to, I mean, I see like Sam Altman, for instance, like posting, like, he asked ChatGPT a question like about like, what is the nature of existence or whatever, and like posting like the answer as if like that answer is meaningful. Or was produced by something with intelligence, So I feel like when they talk about this super intelligent AI, what's being pointed to as like the evidence that is something that's imminent is large language models. I like there's other forms of AI, like the AI you have in your video game or whatever, but that's not super advanced either. Or like, there might be other forms of this, but I feel like that's like what's supposed to be, like, oh shit, like this whole, paradigm is about to shift because we have this large language model thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely sort of like pro AI, but weirdly, I don't really think large language models are that kind of interesting. And the reason, basically, yeah, for the reasons you say, I mean, it is because I don't actually even use, I don't really, or I've very rarely used ChatGPT or DeepSeek, or any of these things. I mean, my main experience of them is because I'm teaching at universities is just basically marking.
Yes.
AI generated.
I hate grading ChatGPT. I won't go off into this because Dimitri's heard it 1,000 times, but like, I'll say it in a sentence. Like I have seen like human creativity die in real time, like from 2023 to like today. Like I've seen like a massive decrease in like students' ability to think on their own. That is like one thing that I will say is impressive in a negative way, how quickly people have become dependent on it to think for them, which is very alarming and upsetting. Granted, like you encounter in certain contexts, like classes that students may not want to be taking, it's a little bit different, but like, again, I won't go on too long about this, but so when you say you're pro AI, but you're not interested in large language models, I'm curious, like what do you think of when you think of like AI? Like something that's like purely like data on Star Trek, like a hypothetical thing in the future, or like what does AI mean to you? Because I feel like to a lot of these people, it does mean something that, if not equal to ChatGPT now, will be evolving from the work they're doing in that area.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that's how they view it. And yeah, I should preface this by saying that it's not that I mean, I do think there's certainly kind of interesting sort of at least cultural kind of phenomena that's emerging in kind of engagement with large language models like did you? I'm sure you probably saw that New York Times article a couple of weeks ago where they interviewed a bunch of people that were in kind of weird mystical or
Yes,
like sort of
yes.
Yeah,
I
erotic.
read
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I collected
yeah,
like
yeah.
10 articles from the last month that's really a big story right now that this is
Yeah,
like kind
people
of
are like
happening
losing
in
their
real
minds.
time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the ChatGPT induced psychosis is what they're calling
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
found it, I'm finding it a little confusing because, as if I'm missing something because yeah, I'm seemingly quite pro AI. People sort of know me as certainly being kind of team AI, but then I'm finding all these people that I interact with, friends and so on that I don't think really had any interest in AI, but they're all kind of obsessed and kind of addicted to ChatGPT, and I'm weirdly not. So I'm finding this a weird kind of dissonance a bit.
Interesting.
Uh but yeah, and so I definitely think there's kind of cultural, at least a certain kind of cultural kind of kind of phenomena that can emerge out of it that will be quite fruitful and interesting. It's just not, I mean, yeah, it's just not because of my kind of engagement with it largely through teaching. I mean, I have to literally kind of I've actually my next sort of Substack post is going to be about it is about kind of the way that basically if you're a teacher at a university, you're just a Turing cop now. You're basically
That's
you're
exactly
looking
what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yes, I've used the exact same metaphor, like that you like. Well, I haven't said Turing cop, but yeah, that is a more specific thing. But I've definitely it does change the relationship from one that's like collaborative to being like adversarial, where you're just trying to catch students out. Like if you like basically you have to change like the structure of like humanities education totally, so that like they have fewer opportunities to like use this thing. It just has to be like
Yeah.
oral
Got a blue
exams and things in
books.
class,
Yeah.
like to like shoot an EMP blast in the classroom, like whatever it takes. Like if you want to preserve it, it's
Faraday
going to take
cage.
something like that. But no, I'm curious about like so it's interesting actually. I'm curious to hear like your perspective on this, because like I'm kind of the opposite in a way, where like I'm like very very anti AI, but that is entirely because I never thought about AI like except maybe in like some very conceptual way. Like to me, like before 2023, AI to me was something that was significant in like, the AI in like civilization like is bad. And like, in order for the game to be difficult, like you had to let the AI cheat so that like it will be competitive, because like, that's like my AI. Like AI is like a video game thing. And then like I knew of AI as the marketing term people were using for these large language models. And I was like, well, this isn't really intelligence. Like, I mean, I never bothered me when it was about, when it was video games, to kind of understood, like, of course, these things aren't intelligent. They don't even know how to play this game that they're built to play.
Mhm.
But like, it became a thing where people were trying to represent, even very early on, even from Blake Lemoine, people were trying to represent these like large language models as being real intelligence. So then I was like, I hated this whole like branding scheme of AI. But I'm interested to hear about like, someone who like was into AI and like an advocate for AI before any of this happened, or like someone who identified as pro AI. Like, what does AI actually mean to you? Like what do you envision it being, and what does it mean to you? Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of have two kind of somewhat distinct responses are coming to mind. One, yeah, yes, and so uh, one of them would just be, which is kind of the more fundamental one, would be that because I'm specifically kind of more interested in AGI and kind of advanced AI, at least human level intelligence, if not more so, and and yeah, so these and so sort of as I was saying before, if those kinds of descriptions that you get from AI safety researchers of artificial superintelligence are actually kind of structurally isomorphic with capital or the market, then I would go in the direction of just saying that capital is AGI. Capital is an artificial superintelligence, and that's actually the AI that I'm talking
Okay.
about.
Okay.
So
Wait. But so
so
you are pro capitalism as in terms of AGI? Is that what you're saying? Like no, like because I'm interested in like your, again, I hope I'm not like I like push it too hard here, but I want to know like when you know yeah, you say people like in your life like know you as being interested in AI. Like to me, like, I mean, AGI, yeah, like I said, like if it's like data, I guess like maybe that's okay. Like I don't know. I mean, I always like empathize with data and his struggle to experience human emotions or whatever. But that's like a a fantasy story, and it's like design. I like and I want to know more like about like do you see this as something that's imminent and like yeah like what you say if capital is AGI like are you like in favor of that AGI or you're just interested like explain like
Yeah, so I guess I should say probably more specifically, rather than just being kind of pro AI, I guess I mean basically I'm just like a philosopher and so in that sense I'm just I mean at least in my understanding of the kind of philosophical tradition that I'm coming out of, I'm just interested in kind of basically descriptions of reality. I just want to know what's happening.
Right. Well,
Basically.
no, yeah,
What's
so
really
am I.
happening.
Yeah, in a very, very
Yeah.
different way. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not like in the discipline of philosophy, but like, a lot of my work does deal with like, ontology and epistemology and in Islamic intellectual history. Very, very distant from, but I do notice a lot of the same themes in some ways. But so I mean, I'm also interested in the description of reality. But yeah, like,
But so
yeah,
for me at
yeah.
least that means what that means is that yeah, and so basically I'm saying that yeah, because the issue is that if you get to this conclusion where that I have where okay, so the structure of what's being described as a kind of runaway artificial superintelligence is essentially one and the same with real existing capital, then what that mean the kind of next kind of extrapolation I make from that is that okay, that just means that the technological singularity has already happened. It happened in the 19th century industrial revolution basically. And where and then when you kind of read I mean because the key thing with Yudkowsky and stuff is that the only way to align an artificial superintelligence is to work out how to align it before you make it. Because once you make it, if it has other interests, it's more powerful, more intelligent than you can't align it with you. So you have to, that's why he's particularly terrified. It's like we get one shot to do this and you have to do it beforehand. It's once it's come into being, if it's not aligned, it's already too late. And so for me, that's kind of the same thing. Yeah, that's the same thing. It's that this sort of capital kind of this capitalist superintelligence already exists. The singularity already happened. There's already this kind of runaway, self-improving kind of superintelligence in the guise of the market, and it's too and if it's too late, if it's already kind of unaligned with our interests and we can't actually regulate it or overthrow it, then just being a philosopher in the sense I'm saying of just being interested in what's happening, that just means being kind of sort of interested in reality and the reality as far as I see it is that this is
I see.
horrible. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like what you mean is you're interested not in like descriptions of reality like as an object of study. You're interested in, I guess this is maybe the nature of the discipline of philosophy. You're interested in describing reality and producing like an accurate description of reality.
Yeah,
which I mean, I guess
I
everyone
think
is kind of to an extent, but like that's like your main drive as like a researcher and a writer and a scholar.
Yeah, as a philosopher, that's what I'm
Yeah.
pro in the sense. And so if the reality is that there is this inexorable kind of capitalist AI and that is what governs our reality, then that's what I'm pro in the sense that I want to try and describe that and understand that. But that's as a philosopher, because I think that's the kind of drive of a philosopher is love of
Right.
wisdom.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas
I had a feeling. Yeah.
as a human, I see that
No, I had
this is
I
not
had a
my
feeling that what
interest.
you meant was that like AI was like a term of art that like you were using in your scholarly work, like from before the like recent kind of like quote unquote AI explosion, and like so that's maybe why people perceived you as being like yeah, because like again like I get like intuitively that like I'm anti AI because of my experience with the large language models that have been marketed as AI, which like and the sort of like fervor around it, which and before it wasn't even on my radar at all. Like my entire impression of what AI means is based on how these things have been aggressively branded to us, as AI, which yeah, but
Yeah.
I do find that interesting, and I especially find interesting the idea that these predictions of the future are actually descriptions of the past. I find that to be like that the idea of this technological singularity that is like ever like imminent is actually something that has had that is actually a description of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
to quote Peter Thiel from just a few days ago in his New York Times interview, like a lot of these big boosters want to go back to the future. They love Back to
yes,
the Future.
right.
They love invoking Back to the Future, and they're mad that there aren't
Yeah.
hoverboards and flying DeLoreans and stuff. But like he kept invoking that throughout his like Ross Douthat conversation of like, how do we get back to the future? Over and over again. And in a way, that is like kind of back to I think there was even in my Nick Land video, there was like a 90s rave song about going back to the future, but in a way, like they're almost trying to like, I don't know, manifest what has already, I don't know, bring to completion a process that began 150 years ago, through like the
Okay.
development of
But
capitalism.
let's tease this out because like I mean maybe you'll be more interested in this and like stop me and like direct the conversation where you want it to go. Like if you want to talk about like Dimitri's interest of like the nitty gritty, but I feel like maybe you will be interested in talking about ideas. But if you're not,
Okay,
definitely stop me. But yeah,
um,
like I want to know like in what like when you say AGI, that's like artificial general intelligence. That is like the true human intelligence, which as of now does not exist. So when you describe capital in that way, like say more. Like what does it mean for it to be AGI as opposed to I don't know, some other kind of framework like I don't know,
I mean,
what yeah. Like,
in a way, it could be, in a way, the market is more of a general intelligence than humans are, but from certain perspectives, like yeah, like I mean, if you kind of look at certain kind of, I guess, like Mises and certain Austrian economists, they and Hayek to a certain extent, one of their kind of central claims is that and their whole critique of kind of centralized socialist, whether it's actually communist not or not, but 20th century kind of centralized rational planning is just that humans can't actually have all the information to coordinate the production and distribution of an entire economy, a complex kind of modern economy. And so their whole kind of claim is that the market solves these coordination problems. And so in a sense, it has a more general intelligence in the sense that it can solve much more complex problems than any kind of, any humans can, any kind of Politburo of kind of rational planners can.
Right.
I mean, that would just be, yeah, one sense. Yeah, I mean, we could go into it more. I mean, because the other thing I was going to say is how I said I had sort of two responses. The second kind of response that maybe less kind of deranged.
No. I didn't think that was the range. I keep going.
Is that there are kind of much more literal AIs that I think are much more interesting. And in particular, I think the most interesting one is, or at least kind of more generally intelligent. And the one I have in mind is kind of AlphaGo and AlphaZero and these Google DeepMind's Go playing AIs. Like the kind of famous so AlphaGo. There's a Netflix documentary about this where AlphaGo
I haven't seen it.
is kind of Go playing AI.
Sorry,
it
just to
beats
clarify, they're designed to play the game Go.
Oh, right, right.
And they're
Yeah,
kind of like
Go.
advanced chess engines, but they're for Go. Is that like what they're? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a slightly more kind of it's a slightly more. It's considered a harder milestone for AI to pass being able to play
Right.
Go than chess because it requires
Yes, yeah. I mean,
more
chess is like
permutations of moves and things like that.
it's already like much better than like like it can easily beat like a lot of chess grandmasters like chess engines, but Go is still like not fully or hasn't yet fully been solved in the same way or hasn't yet it hasn't progressed to the same level. Yeah.
So yeah, and so that was the fear, and then yeah, I think in 2016 or 17, AlphaGo beats the world's greatest human Go player, Lisa Doll, in just a total slaughter. And then actually, AlphaGo was actually a kind of eventually they developed a more advanced version called AlphaGo Zero, and then an even more advanced version called Alpha Zero. And the only Go players they could test the latter two on was AlphaGo itself, because there was no point
Wow.
testing anything. And then they got progressively better. But what I find, I mean, there's a couple of things I find interesting, much more interesting about this kind of AI. One is that for the first one, AlphaGo, it's much more like ChatGPT or something, where it was basically programmed with the rules of the game, as well as a bunch of data sets of expert human Go players, how they play, their strategies, and so on. And so it had this
Yeah.
database to draw on and was inferring its moves based on that. But what's more interesting is that with the latter two models, it actually wasn't programmed with any data sets of any gameplay. It was only given the rules of the game. It was programmed with the rules of the game, and then it just played itself millions and millions of times until it achieved superhuman Go performance. And
Yeah, and it
I
would
think
like
that's much
invent
more
moves
interesting.
in Go that like no one had ever thought of before, right? I vaguely remember this. Yeah. I didn't
Yeah, that
realize that
was
it was
the
like just so dominant that no one could beat it already, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that was the crucial. In particular, there was one move it made in the game with Lisa Doll, the human Go champion, which at like, the commentators at the time, because this was sort of live, this was live stream because this was in South Korea, and it was kind of Go is really much more kind of popular there, and so it was like a prime time event. And the commentators, there were a bunch of commentators, and everyone, even actually the DeepMind team thought that it was a mistake or it was malfunctioning or something, because it was just such
Yeah.
an outrageous move to make from a human perspective of
Right.
human Go strategy traditions. But it just proved crucial many moves later on in its victory.
Right.
Um,
Yes. Yeah. And
yeah,
that's kind of like like chess is similar. I know a little bit more about chess, like, but some of the same principles apply where like a lot of the engine moves, like they don't make any sense, like, you know, whether like on a certain level, or like like you can't, like a human can't like learn to play like a chess engine, because like it requires like thinking ahead at like a level that, like, you know, would, you know, just not like not possible even for the most like brilliant like chess players. Like it just like operates in a different way. I mean,
but
yeah, it
what's
is
the
interesting. Yeah, it's like it is interesting, that contrast, because yeah, in the past, like the thing that AI was like really like the stereotypical like AI versus human contests were in these types of like complete information strategy games. And now it's interesting because like a lot of the discourse has shifted into these large language models that can't even like play chess at all. But it is. Sorry, I didn't mean to, you know, keep going.
no, it's
You were taking me this point about AlphaGo and how it just played itself a million times based on the rules of the game, and it's you know, etc.
So that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's already, I think, something quite distinct from something like ChatGPT, in the sense that it's not
Yes.
based on past experience. It's actually just playing itself, but then and coming up from tabula rasa, like purely from scratch. But also, what I kind of find particularly interesting about these kind of Go playing AIs is which sort of, this is sort of brings it more into the realm of kind of, I guess, politics or geopolitics or something. So maybe it would be of interest, is sort of why I bring it up. So I read this, I came across this book called it was written by this guy, I think he's named Steve Boorman, who wrote it in, I think, 1968. And he was like a kind of 17-year-old maths whiz kid at the time. But yeah, he wrote this book called, I think it's called a Maoist, oh sorry, a Go interpretation of Maoist revolutionary strategy.
Hmm.
And his claim, it was this book about he wanted to know why the Maoist sort of guerrilla fighters were able to defeat both the Japanese, the nationalists, the Western imperialists, despite being so, you know, technologically and militarily sort of outgunned and overpowered.
Mhm.
And his claim is that, and he sort of looks at how Mao, in his kind of war writings on protracted war and so on, uh, repeatedly uses Go as a metaphor.
Right, I've heard
Um,
about this. Yeah, he wrote a lot
yeah,
about Go. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a very
and
educational game for like military strategy, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and uh, yeah, and so he suggests that, okay, well, the reason why the Chinese mouse were able to achieve victory was they were basically playing the war as a game of Go, whereas everyone else, the Japanese, the imperialists, were playing it as a game of chess. And in the sense that in chess, you have to protect the king at all costs, right? So you need to centralize, you need to like defend a sort of center. There's like a centerpiece that you have to defend. And and he sort of, Boorman reads that as, okay, so the imperialists, the invaders, they were all holed up in the cities. They just took the metropolitan cities in China and were just centralized around them. Whereas in Go, if you just put all your pieces in one sort of centralized together, you can encircle pieces. Yeah. So
that's how you win, basically, right? Is by like encircling enemy pieces, right? It's like literally the countryside surrounds the city, you know?
Yeah. So it's like, putting all your pieces in one area, you're just immediately going to lose. So you need to disperse your pieces at the outer edges and sort of slowly surround. And Boorman's suggestion is that that is the Maoist strategy. You take the countryside, you take the provinces, you take the peasantry, and you slowly encircle. And it's a very detailed analysis. Like he has diagrams and stuff. It's really interesting. But what that just made me, just reading that, what came to mind was that, okay, and maybe this is a bit of a deranged leap of logic, like the capital AI thing as well. But I was just thinking, well, so now we have these kind of AI playing AIs that can play Go at superhuman level, greater than any humans can. If Go is a real world war strategy, then we already have an AI that has basically achieved superhuman performance at war and at real world warfare. And so I think these kind of Go playing AIs are much more kind of generally intelligent, I wouldn't say they're kind of it's full blown general intelligence necessarily, but I think that's a much more advanced form of AI than ChatGPT, as far as I can see.
Right.
And
I would probably agree with that, since like ChatGPT, they said it's just like a bunch of training data, like with autocorrect. Whereas this, like, you know, if it's truly just training against itself, like I've like, you know, seen a little bit of like play from these advanced engines. In fact, maybe one of them even was like one of these Google DeepMind things where they play like chess, like in this crazy like way, you know, like they have like this crazy kind of like almost like, you know, it's described as like an inhuman style. Not to like portray myself as like, you know, just play like as a kid, like, you know, I'm not like particularly good at it, but I still like maintain it. And I'm interested in it for kind of the same reasons like you're talking about, like the sort of artistic, like historical like side of it, and the, you know, the way that it's been used like as a like an allegory for so many different things across time. But I wonder like, because certainly like Google DeepMind or AlphaZero can like extrapolate, like, or it has the generalization to be able to be like, you know, to learn how to play chess and then to learn how to play Go, like, and though like it can maybe, but can it transfer ideas from each, you know, could it, like, for instance, could it really truly extrapolate, like Mao is able to extrapolate the principles of Go to warfare? Can AI do that? Like, can it extrapolate the principles to a different, like, is there you know, an indication of that?
I mean, I don't know in terms of specifically AlphaGo and DeepMind's AIs. I'm not sure. I mean, the thing that I think is the one thing you need to give it is basically the rules of a game. But even that is quite, so if it's just programmed with, I mean, it should be said, I guess AlphaZero, the last one they made, can play chess, Go, shogi. It's not just a Go playing AI, but that's because it was given the rules of these different games. But I think what's interesting about that.
So do you think that like it's possible? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you know, this is maybe to your point. Do you think that like right now, like someone has given like the entire like, you know, like all the information on like the U.S. like naval fleet and like all of our nuclear weapons and like all these like information about like our capabilities and like asked like, you know, like AlphaGo or like AlphaZero or whatever to like come up with a way to like dominate the planet, or like, you know, for Israel to control the entire Middle East for like, you know, the rest of human history, like you know,
is there a way to beat China,
I mean,
etc.?
Yeah.
I definitely think I'm almost certain that's happened. Like, or because all you need to give it, because we have game theory, so you can. It's not perfect kind of models of reality, but you can formalize in a set of kind of formal rules like a game, various war
This is
scenarios.
like I had no mouth, I must scream. So you would probably guess that both like the United States and China probably are like
Yeah.
right now like
Running simulations.
using AI to like figure out like their economy and their military strategy.
Well, we don't even need to guess it, at least in the case of China, because it's actually, there was like a report on this that the People's Liberation Army have been convening higher level conferences about AlphaGo
All right.
specifically.
I'm
Um,
starting to like get a little bit freaked out. I'm still like you're kind of like Yadowski pilling me like a little bit now. Like I am a little bit like getting concerned. Like that is worrisome. Like whether it's because like this sort of like I'm thinking of the story I have no mouth that I must scream in particular, or like any of these things like Terminator or whatever,
Mhm.
like like outsourcing your military capabilities. I mean, it's a tale as old as time in a way. It's like giving you like what making your slaves fight a war for you, like making your Mamelukes fight
Right.
like a war for you, like that you're not going to be slaves for very long. But I don't know if it actually has the will or anything like that to actually do this, but like so I'm not saying that it's gonna like subvert our human governments or anything necessarily, except maybe insofar as like I don't trust it to be aligned with human values, like in the same way that the human, like I mean I guess it's the objective is to win in a game of chess, and so in that way like there's easy alignment, but like the way that it plays is so different. So
That I mean, I do wonder, is it not a threat to your point that even if it thinks it's working in like alignment with its like human masters, that it pursues a logical course of victory that ends up like where it ends up doing horrible things if it had like direct autonomous access to like weapon systems that like the ends justify the means kind of
or
thing, or
even if it's like give me like the plans to, because you could ask like it step by step, like if you were playing chess you could ask like what move should I make now, what move should I make now. So even if it doesn't have full autonomous control of our weapon system, like I feel like I don't know, maybe this is maybe I'm not being rational right now and I'm operating from an emotional place, but that I don't feel safe thinking about that. Like that doesn't make me feel like I'm in good hands or any hands at all. Like that makes me feel like,
Well,
yeah.
I think that there's another like attendant, somewhat related fear that gets back to the very personal level of the matter of like Chat GPT induced psychosis, but like think of extrapolating that all the way to the highest level of like international military confrontation and the propensity for people. Not saying like a general is going to read it and the Chat GPT is like, "You're a messiah, launch the nukes," and he's going to be like, "Okay," but the capacity for humans to believe that the information they're getting from these AIs or LLMs or whatever is like unfalsifiable, take it to the bank, total like, but then, I mean, at least in the case of LLMs, it is dealing more with like language and communication where it does lie and hallucinate and just make up things and not tell the truth. Presumably, maybe military AIs would have more like safeguards or something, but even if it just prints out like results about facts and figures and probabilities and coordinates and things like that that lead people to make decisions that like give people the confidence to make certain decisions that end up like backfiring disastrously, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like absolute minefield, right? Like,
I
or
mean, and
I don't know.
even like in AI chess, like you do notice that like it'll like sacrifice like pieces like crazy to get in position, like in a way that humans like it's more comfortable with like these risks. And in that context, like it's fine because like all that matters is checkmating the king. But
Mhm.
in like a war, human lives are at stake, and like depending on how like the objective is defined, like again, it gets back to this issue of like, is it all about like people having the maximum amount of fun or whatever, like how many millions or billions are going to be sacrificed, you know, in order to achieve like whatever objective is being set. I mean, not to like spiral off here, but it seems like,
That's the same as Go as well. Like it's what's unique about the AlphaGo is that it plays extremely offensively. So
Yeah.
it's very kind of kamikaze.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Have you guys seen the new Mission Impossible film?
You know what? I honestly have not paid any attention to Mission Impossible at all. I thought about going to see, like, you know, I didn't actually think about going to see that movie, but I did hear that like the Mission Impossible movies were good. So I recently watched like one from a while ago, like which I didn't like find interesting, I guess because like I don't like, I do find it impressive, I guess, that Tom Cruise, like, I guess believes that he's like an operating Satan level, like whatever. And like, he's a god and like nothing can touch him. So he does these like insane death defying stunts. Like, I guess that is in a way impressive, but like, you know, as like a film, I don't know. Yeah. Like, but anyway, sorry. What were you going to say about
I just bring it up because the last one, like this most recent one is about, and it's the final one. And so the idea is, well, who can, you know, Tom Cruise is the Ubermensch, who can be his kind of, you know, the final boss,
right?
The arch nemesis, and it's an AI, it's a runaway AI.
No.
And it literally starts off in the first 5 minutes. It starts off with this news report of the economy's being shut down. It has control over the nuclear weapons. There's an AI doomsday cult that are worshipping the AI and trying to accelerate.
I always wondered if Mission Impossible had like weird, like, you know, it's like they're rubbing in our faces, folks. Like revelation of the method type plot lines, you know.
In order to make those movies, they have to like consult heavily with like, you know, the CIA and like the, you know, military and all this shit. So like,
there's this bit where sort of one of the generals, the US generals, it turns out he's been sort of talking to ChatGPT too much.
I stand corrected.
Tries to assassinate the president. And there's a
funny.
Yeah,
that is funny.
It's pretty insane. There's a bit where Tom Cruise is sort of like kicking an AI doomer accelerationist in the head, and it's just like, you spend too much time on the internet. He literally says that. But
wow, interesting.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, it also reads as this, because the AI controls everything, or all the technology and the internet. They have to. That's why he has to fly these analog old school planes and stuff where they don't have. And so it's kind of reads as this weird thing where it's like, oh, it reads as like a classic, like a classic refutation of AI. Like, oh, well, can AI breathe underwater for 10 minutes? Can AI fly this plane and jump off a plane? And
I guess if you put it underwater for longer, I guess. I mean, like, if it's just a computer. Oh, I guess, you know.
It's waterproof.
But it feels like this last kind of dying cry of our best human, Tom Cruise.
Right.
You know, our strongest
red-blooded movie star.
Trying to sort of, show that humanity can still be creative and imaginative or something. I mean, it literally, because it also reads as this like, I don't know, because it was also like with the last Top Gun movie, which was his previous film, as this kind of,
talk about predictive programming.
Also this there's all these lines in it, like there's all these automated jets, and they're like, your kind is dying out. Like,
you know, the original plot for that was that he was going to be a drone operator who was like depressed, and then I think they kind of moved on from that. That was like too depressing, so like they moved it to like AI jets or something. But sorry, go ahead.
No, and just even there, it was like, because when that film came out and was actually kind of really successful, it was after, I think it was maybe even after COVID, or at the tail end of COVID.
Yeah.
And it was sort of seen as, because I mean, I just read it very clearly as this is kind of like Maverick versus the kind of automated jets is kind of this analogy for Hollywood versus streaming, basically.
Oh yeah,
And it was like this again. The fact that it was successful was like, yes, humans are back. Like, humans can still be successful at making films. We don't need algorithms.
Come out to the theaters.
To me, though, like,
it was all shot through with that.
To me, though, there still is a problem that, like, yes, like, I will, like, chess or Go, even though Go may be more complex. Like, these are still like games that are bounded by like very, like, even though it's like fascinating how like difficult these games can be despite their like simplicity. You know, they are simple, like, in terms of their rules, and like they're very bounded. Like, if you have the capacity to like try a million different things, like in a split second, like, you know, that ability is going to like allow you to like dominate in chess, you know, like that's just how it is. But that is not the case with like a life, you know, or like that's not the case.
War
of,
is
like,
total.
War or like these complex, like it's just much more. I mean, I don't really know anything about war, so I can't really say. I mean, maybe war at a certain level of abstraction is also simple, but like to say that like humans have been defeated in the realm of creativity and imagination, I just feel like I don't feel like I'm in competition with. That's the thing. Like this is what ultimately bothers me the most is like, and I mean, I'm curious to hear what like you think, like, you know, as a philosopher, like I feel like there is a false equivalency between like what it means to think as a human being and what these like computers do. Certainly, like there are levels like where we can compare them. Like, you know, we can compare like who was better at like winning this game of chess. But our experiences of chess and playing it are obviously like so different. I just feel like it is like I just don't feel like that is human intelligence, you know, like it is, you know, you can call that like, you know, I'm not saying that like you have to have a particularly narrow definition of intelligence. You could say that's intelligence, but I just think it's a different human intelligence is a different phenomenon from that. The intelligence as we know it, or even as dolphins have it, is a different phenomenon from that, or so it seems. Like, for now, I guess maybe like I really don't know. Like I've said this before. Like, if you can create like a neural network that is exactly like a human brain, is that neural network, this is, I guess this is, you know, I'm having a like a, you know, an undergraduate or high school student's education in basic philosophical concepts over the last couple of episodes, but I suppose that's what's known as the hard problem of consciousness. I'll just be the audience surrogate here, you know, for any people who like have never heard of any of this stuff, because I'm hearing about it for the first time in our last couple of episodes. But like, yeah, I really don't know if like that's going to produce, that sophisticated neural is going to produce consciousness as like you, Dimitri, or I actually experience it. So, and that blurring, I mean, again, I think that what you're talking about with like AlphaGo is much more interesting because of like, you know, the way that it is able to like play against itself and like, but I wonder if the reason why ChatGPT has kind of like the AI conversation has shifted so much to be centered around that, even though the accomplishments of these game computers are so much more impressive, is because of like its ability to create this sort of convincing illusion of, for
pretending to be a person,
human thought, yeah, which I like is not really happening, but like, you know, like but I feel like that is really, you know, and I think that for a lot of these people, both for the Udowski sort of alarmists, maybe less so, because I do see the scary element of the AlphaZero stuff being like, you know, our military capabilities being outsourced to that and everything. You know, speaking of humanity broadly, just like outsourcing this. But I think that he and like when they talk about artificial superintelligence, both the sort of advocates and the accelerationists and the sort of AI safety people or like the alarmists, like I feel like there is this blurring that happens between like when they talk about superintelligence, like this is like a, you know, like they're thinking of it like the I have no mouth, I must scream villain. Or I feel like in Terminator, it was hard to tell like how intelligent they were because they just seemed like they just wanted to terminate really badly. Like, so like
in a way,
or Data.
In a way, Skynet,
Data's evil brother Lore
yeah,
is a good example, you know, of what they're kind of describing.
Yeah, in the Terminator movies, you never get like there are these kind of like manifestations or agents of Skynet, which are the Terminators, which like resemble humans, though like they certainly don't kind of think until the second one is hacked and learns how to love, et cetera, et cetera. But like generally speaking, it's faceless. What's that?
Does he learn how to love, though?
In a way, that's interesting to go back and look at T2 and kind of look at Arnold's performance in that as, you know, the T-800 as a form of like ChatGPT pretending to be like, I know now why you cry, you know, and he does sacrifice himself at the end, but, you know, he is kind of programmed to be a servant.
Oh yeah, I guess he does.
That was the
thing.
He was hacked in the
future,
and like like the humans in the future, the Resistance like hacks him to like be. But it's in it is that still personhood because now he's just hacked to be like a slave to like the human Resistance, like instead of
and I do feel like ChatGPT would. That's like ChatGPT induced psychosis that like John Connor has,
where
he's
crying,
like, oh, he loves me, yeah, like
you know, at the end,
but,
like yeah,
but yeah, like I mean, I feel like they act so robotic in that. It's like kind of a bad example, but like, yeah, like I'm like a super intelligent evil like Rocco's basilisk, like it's smarter than any human. It's exactly like a human, but better in every way, and it can do anything. Like I feel
maybe
like
the
that
Matrix, like the as kind of manifested in like the Oracle character and like the architect as like the sort of intellectual face of that super intelligence.
Exactly,
like you get more of a philosophical sense of like self, kind of in a weird way.
The Oracle, like those are programs, or even Agent Smith. He had a will. He wanted something. He was like, I don't know. Like I feel like you're like, what the hell are you talking about? But yeah, like is this a reasonable fear that we're like approaching this? Yeah, or like I don't know. I feel like this plays a role in the way that all of this is presented. What you've just said I find like to be somewhat persuasive, but I feel like that's not how any of these people ever talk about it. Like they never like I feel like that's like like a kind of AI alarmism that I can buy into. Like more and more, like all the aspects of like the planning of society are going to be like displaced onto these machines that we can't really trust and like really like don't fully understand in many ways. Like because like they're built in a way, but like how they like there's still mysteries about them, which is crazy. Even large language models, there's still things that like are not like quote unquote understood. Like and so that is like kind of like pump the brakes a little bit to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Can I just piggyback on that real quick? Because I just had a thought, like, or a question to pose to you, Vincent. Like, is this insistence of like either it's going to be like a human or a god in just a couple of years, like is the kind of like merging that with all the other stuff you were talking about with like its capabilities, and is this kind of like when SRI put like Cookie Monster's face on the computer like in like child experiments to like enhance human computer cathexis by giving it like this veneer of a human face so that people will accept its rollout into every aspect of their lives? Or is this part of the kind of like quasi-religious almost like the kind of transhumanist messianic thing that is coming from somewhere else in terms of these people that are building it? Like how do you explain why does it have to be a person or a god instead of just being like, I'm perfectly fine calling the Google thing like an advanced intelligence that runs simulations, it's like I'm fine with that. That's a type of intelligence. But like their insistence, like no, it's like basically human, or it's going to become God. And like why the personhood aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it might. I'm not sure, but I think it might have something to do with what Khalid was saying about this. One of the reasons for this kind of, basically how the kind of chatbot that is able to mimic at least kind of human conversation much more than something like AlphaGo. Why that's just what people think AI is. That exhausts what AI means now. Yeah, because it's basically more narcissistic, I guess. So it's kind of, I don't know. I think it's just kind of like anthropomorphic. Basically, it's like it's actually very hard to, because I would not want to make an equivalence between humans and AI, but I think AI is a kind of intelligence. But it's a precisely non-human intelligence, or it's like in the way that it plays Go, it's kind of alien. It plays in a kind of inhuman way. So yeah, I'd want to call it intelligence, but I just wouldn't I wouldn't say it's not intelligent in the way humans are. But that's hard to sort of comprehend and deal with. So I think it just leads to a lot of sort of anthropomorphization, essentially.
Right. Like, I mean, it's strange that like people would want to worship something that can play Go very well.
Right.
Like that is like not like something where I guess like again they're kind of like there's a sort of like extrapolation into the future that because like of the abilities that we see in this domain, those will eventually be, like you say, generalizable. So yeah, I mean, again, like the part of the like I feel like the ethos of subliminal jihad is that we entertain like quote unquote deranged ideas. So I don't think that like there's anything objectionable about the deranged ideas you've mentioned. Do you see a connection between like the other paradigm of AGI that you offered as being like capital and like the sort of the more I guess, yeah, like I guess the quote unquote less deranged answer of like these, like how do they operate like in the same way? Like what's the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I think that so yeah, so if for me, kind of capital itself is the kind of overarching kind of super intelligent level, kind of AI in the level of AGI or super intelligence, that then for me something like AlphaGo even, but definitely large language models are kind of almost like sub components or kind of weak AIs that are generated from this larger kind of super intelligence. So it's in the way, sort of in the way that, yeah, like it's sort of the market capitalist competition is itself the kind of the most general kind of intelligence, and then it generates specific kind of experiments at improving itself. And these experiments are ChatGPT, DeepSeek, but also but not necessarily large language models or neural nets at all. It could be other forms of technology as well. I sort of see it as sort of as like capital is like evolution or natural selection, and ChatGPT, large language models, neural nets, AlphaGo, whatever else, they're kind of like species. They are to large language models are to capital what species are to natural selection. They're kind of instantiations of it.
Okay.
But they're not, they shouldn't be mistaken for the actual general intelligence itself.
Or you could think of them as being like, programs in like one computer or something.
The operating
like
system is capitalism.
And the
apps are like ChatGPT.
Exactly.
The macro and the micro.
Yeah. Or like it, I'm trying to think of like what, this, it's kind of like the like different like mouths. It's interesting like that, like to think that we've given like, capital like a way to speak.
Right.
And like it's like
capitalism with an android face, like with six fingers. It
kind of like, again, like maybe like, the reference to Nick Land is like influencing me here, but I am thinking about like the Lovecraft like mythos. What's Azathoth? The one that's the blind idiot god at the center of the universe, where like it has like a bunch of like polyps that are like constantly like piping, and it's just like dancing madly with like that like description of it as an idiot always like stuck with me, because like it's like a mockery of like an idea of divinity, which I think is like what people have found so arresting about Lovecraft, like even to today. Like like that, like in fact, like this god-like being might just be stupid, like I mean, he might have meant idiot in the sense of like contained unto itself, or like kind of in the vulgar, or not vulgar, in the very strict sense of or sort of the preclinical sense of autistic, but like it just like something that exists only unto itself and is like totally self-contained and has no perception of like the outside, or no perception at all, perhaps like no relationality, and it's just like the fact of itself, which I feel like is there's no awareness, there's no thought, there's just like a responsiveness when you see these, like the way these large language models work. It's interesting to think of that as like an expression of, and in a way it does kind of just like reflect and reinforce, because that's kind of the stumbling block here for me with this I don't want to necessarily call it an allegory, maybe a heuristic. Part of the stumbling block here is like, well, does capital have an agency of its own? In some way we can say perhaps, but also it's like, it wouldn't exist without the participation of human beings. Like we are what, sustain it, even though we do feel that we like can't stop it, that we are like bound to participate in it inexorably. And like we don't feel like we have the ability to actually stop. There does seem to be on some level, like, it does seem to be true in terms of this accurate description of reality, that if we all did, like we all could stop, but even though we perhaps feel like we can, and maybe for practical reasons we can't, like maybe it's virtually possible but not actually possible, I don't know. But yeah, like, so that is like to conceive of it as like a sovereign intelligence, that's like a stumbling block for me, because we like it's all acts through like human agency. So have we become like programs in this operating system as well? Like, and are we like at this point like no different from these large language models? Like it's like, I don't know. Yeah, Like how does that like where do we fit in? Where do human beings fit in this like, what is, if we're going to extend this heuristic or this analogy, like what is our role in the idea of capital as artificial general intelligence?
I mean, I certainly, yeah, I mean, it certainly does seem as if you need humans at this point for
Yeah.
the markets to function. It does, whether you need human will is kind of I don't know, because I mean, it seems more and more pushing in the trajectory, and whether it can get all the way of kind of both not just increasing, because you could say, okay, there's definitely increasing automation of production. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Maybe it could get to the point of like almost virtually full automation of production. But then you've got the kind of issue of you would need, who are these products going to be sold to, basically? You need consumers still. But even, and so then you need humans to consume. But then even there, it's sort of, I mean, even our consumption is being automated in a way in terms of kind of just algorithms sort of guiding
Right.
our behavior more and more.
Hmm.
Both kind of
I feel like
Yeah.
something's haunting like this conversation, which is it's there's a specter of Marx here and 20th century communism, and the idea that a lot of these countries attempted at varying levels to try to implement some kind of cybernetic like computerized system of central planning, or even before computer technology, they were kind of doing it the analog way, like in the Soviet Union. And then there were other limited experiments in like Cybersyn and Chile. And this was for a while, like there was a kind of like Marxist like determinism that like this was going to be more logical and more productive and more et cetera, and would prevail in like the longue durée. And I definitely heard arguments before that the everything you described about the market and like its function as like a price discovery mechanism is kind of like this vast cybernetic kind of information system that kind of coordinates without like human actors necessarily all doing it. You'd say, well, that's why communism failed, is because capitalism was constantly optimizing, then developed computer information technology, and like the price discovery power of the market is just better. And but then it's like, well, what if they had computers like we have today? Like it doesn't seem to me like a foregone conclusion that, you'd have to go back to some argument about human nature, about humans just don't work that way or something. But I feel like logistically, like we are closer to that. That's much more attainable than it's ever been. Obviously, like the biggest boosters of AI are not going to be ruminating about how this could be used to institute some kind of like abundance communist, like cybernetic utopia. But I wonder, like, is there a chance of that? Is there, at what point, also, if it immiserates everybody and most jobs are eliminated, the consumer markets kind of evaporate, like, at what point? I mean, it almost seems like a socialism or barbarism kind of moment, because, like, what do the owners need all these people for if we get to that point? Conversely, aren't the people going to be like, why don't we take over this machine and then like distribute shit according to how the majority of people want to distribute it? Like, do you see any like, like a sort of a Bolshevik style like reversal, taking control of the machinery of like the capitalist, system, and then using it for emancipatory ends?
yeah.
What do you
So
think?
yeah, I think that's really interesting. I definitely think there's something there. I'll preface this by saying that I basically, even though I said I was pro AI, which may have been a kind of euphemism for being pro something else, the I would say that that also actually just means that something like I would say communism, but particularly basically the Bolsheviks are the greatest, from that perspective, are the greatest attempt at a friendly AI project that's ever been that's ever transpired, and that's actually the model that, if that is really kind of the starting point, if for that Yukowski and anyone committed to the AI alignment problem should really be looking at that basically. But
Great
but
line, by the way. Great line. The
thanks.
friendliest AI project in history. I
But
like
in
that.
terms
I
of
like
the
that. That's
kind,
interesting.
in terms of the sort of using, so now, because yeah, there's definitely this kind of objection arises in the history of sort of Austrian economics and these kinds of critiques of the centralized rational planning, where okay, sure, that kind of holds maybe at the time that Hayek and Mises were making these critiques in the 20s and 30s and so on. But now we have kind of modern computation, and so we're able to sort of gather data on the different much more complex data and use it to sort of work out what to produce, where it needs to be distributed, and so on. And the thing, I still don't really think that solves the problem, because, well, firstly, that's also actually just that ends up being something like, and then really kind of what you want to be. Basically, you're replacing the centralized rational planner with something like ChatGPT at that point, or a large language model. But also, I think the issue is that, I mean, I think the key kind of scenario is that if you're like imagining like a centralized body of rational planners and a governmental body, and they're trying to decide whether to invest resources into there's two new methods of production, new techniques of production, and they're trying to, okay, which one do we invest in? Which one is more efficient? How do they actually know which one to invest in? The issue is that if they're new methods of production, they can't rely on past data sets. There's no precedent for them to base that investment on. And that's kind of the scenario that Mises and Hayek are envisioning, that rational planning can't solve. It's not so much like it's like, oh, okay, we could invest in, steam engines or I don't know, computers. And it's like, well, we have past historical data about which one is more efficient for what purposes. So that's not really a problem, because the rational planners can look to the past data. But if you're confronted with two genuinely new methods of production where there's no precedent, then you can't actually rely on any kind of past experience to know which one's more efficient. And their Mises and Hayek's claim is the market solves this because it just will run both of them simultaneously. It'll invest in both of them. Different enterprises will invest in both of them, and then you'll see which one proves more profitable, cheaper to produce, and that kind of thing through the competition.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, how do you deal with like the unprecedented and novelty in? I mean, that's what I think is the problem with with that's like the problem with large language models as well. It can't it's basically Hume's problem of induction. It's like, what do you do when you're confronted with a black swan? Like, basically, it's like you can't, the future can surprise us. And so there are unknowns in the future, and you can't always rely on past data sets to determine everything. And I don't know, I would see that as that kind of reliance on the past, as both for problem and it's that inability to therefore confront the future novelty is kind of both the problem of large language models and of centralized planning.
Right. No, that makes sense. I guess at the same time, like Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism always, praxis is key, right? Like you have to experiment in the real world and like see what works and what doesn't, and make smart decisions. Yeah.
Yes. It is true. Like it is interesting, like that comparison.